What's up guys, Shine here, and today we are doing this channel's very first camera comparison video. This comparison is between the newly announced flagship killer, the Poco F3, and last year's budget Mi Note 10 Lite. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting with the specifications, the Poco F3 comes with a 48 megapixel Sony IMX582 with an f1.79 aperture. The ultrawide camera is an 8 megapixel shooter with an f2.2 aperture, while the macro cam is 5 megapixels. Something to note here is that the IMX582 sensor is the same as the 2-year-old IMX586, which was found on devices like the K20 Pro and the OnePlus 7 Pro. The only difference being that the 586 can record at 4K 60 FPS, while the 582 is capped at 30 FPS. This is kind of a shame considering the Snapdragon 870 available in the F3 is capable of recording up to 8K 30 FPS. Secondly, we have the Mi Note 10 Lite. This phone comes with a 64 megapixel Sony IMX686 sensor with an aperture of f1.89. The sensor on this phone is the newer generation of the sensor found in the Poco F3, and the ultrawide camera is an 8 megapixel shooter with an f2.2 aperture. This phone also has a 2 megapixel macro camera and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So now with that out of the way, let's get into the pictures. When taking shots in auto mode, the Poco shoots in 12 megapixels while the Note 10 Lite shoots in 16. When talking about daytime image quality, the Poco's images have more natural colors and exposure and better dynamic range, but they are also a bit too contrasty for my liking. Whereas the images from the Note 10 Lite have more detail and go for a warmer tint and less contrast, which makes a more balanced image. So overall I'd say it comes down to personal preference, but I would personally give the slight edge to the Note 10 Lite. While shooting in both of the camera's high definition modes, the gap between the two phones' sharpnesses shortens drastically, and in this situation I think the Poco has better images because I prefer the more natural colors. The detail in the wide-angle shots between the two phones is equal due to both of them having the same sensor. Having said that, the dynamic range in the Poco F3 is better, as can be seen, because the Mi Note 10 Lite has this weird purple artifacting because of the HDR in the tree leaves and at the bottom of the tree, which the Poco F3 does not. Other than that, the colors are a little more lifelike on the F3, so I would have to give the win as far as wide angle shots go to the F3. In macro shots, the Poco wins by a landslide due to having the better 5 megapixel camera when compared to the 2 megapixels on the Note 10 Lite. The macro shots are consistently sharper, have better colors, and the addition of autofocus in the F3 makes taking pictures so much easier. For selfies, I'd have to give the slight edge to the Poco. Despite it having less dynamic range, it handles skin tones better and is sharper than the Note 10 Lite, which lets it churn out more pleasing images most of the time.
This is 4K recording on the Poco F3 and on the Mi Note 10 Lite. Both phones are going side by side, so we have a good chance to see the stabilization and the microphones. The Note 10 Lite seems to have warmer colors and a lot more panning judder while I move around. Dynamic range wise, I can't tell right now. I'd have to look in the laptop how it looks, but I think it looks pretty even. I kind of prefer. The thing is, the Note 10 Lite has warmer tones which kind of look better, but the Poco F3's cooler tones are a more accurate representation of what the scene actually looks like. So yeah guys, this is me walking. You guys can see the stabilization, panning. I see a lot of panning judder in the Note 10 Lite, but yeah, both phones at 4K 30.
When talking about video, the win again goes to the F3, as it has sharper 4K videos with better stabilization and less panning judder. The colors and exposure for the most part come out looking natural in both phones, while the sound quality on the F3 is also better, with clearer and more accurate audio. Something to note here is that the F3 records audio at 320 kilobits per second, while the Note 10 Lite caps out at 96 kilobits per second for some odd reason. As far as nighttime shots go, the Poco F3 shot is brighter, has more detail, a little less noise, and something to note is the right window in both of the images have different colors, where in the Note 10 Lite it's yellow, while on the Poco F3 it is green. This really shows the color science that goes into each phone, because in real life the color is a mixture between the two, and Xiaomi decides to take it towards a yellowish tint, while Poco likes to keep it cooler. But yeah, overall, the pictures during the nighttime between night mode and non-night mode look better by far on the Poco F3. At nighttime, the selfies from the Note 10 Lite come out looking a lot brighter compared to the Poco, but it is worth noting that when you zoom in, you can clearly see that the Poco has a lot less noise than the Note 10 Lite. Otherwise, detail on both of the phones is roughly the same. And one other thing I forgot to say during the daytime selfies is that the Poco F3's selfie camera is a lot wider than the Note 10 Lite's, meaning you can get a lot more into the image compared to the other phone. Both of the videos look very dark and grainy, and you can see some artifacting because of EIS. But given that, I think the Poco looks better because it is brighter and it has more saturation in the leaves and whatnot. But I would really like to see what you guys think. Please leave a comment below as to which you guys think looks better between the two. When it comes to extra features, there is really no comparison between the two phones. The F3 comes with a whole host of new modes, like the video and image clone mode or the long exposure mode, which in itself has 6 different modes to choose from. There's also a movie effects mode and dual video mode, not to mention its new audio zoom feature, and AI camera for video as well. The Poco's lead isn't only in all of the new features that the Note 10 Lite doesn't have, but also in the features they both have, like slow motion video recording, where the Note 10 Lite is capable of 120 FPS at 1080p and 240 and 960 FPS at 720. While the F3 is capable of doing 120, 240, and 960 FPS slow motion in 1080p. Not only that, but even the 1080p 120 FPS quality of the F3 is better than that found on the Note 10 Lite. In conclusion, despite the Note 10 Lite having the newer sensor and the higher megapixel count, it is let down by the Snapdragon 730G's inferior image processing and a high aperture. This leads to the Poco having better stabilization, better colors, less noise, and also better audio from the microphones. The story was roughly the same during the nighttime shots, with the Poco being brighter and having more detail. The wide-angle cameras were roughly the same on both phones, but the Poco had better dynamic range. Also, I prefer what Poco did with ditching the depth sensor and opting for a better macro cam, as those images go from being unusable on the Note 10 Lite to coming out quite pleasing on the F3. So even though I think the Note 10 Lite has a slight edge in daytime photography, I'd have to give the overall win to the F3 because it is better in nearly every other category. Plus, all of the new features provided with the F3 make it a much more appealing camera system. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed and liked the video. See you next time. Peace.